Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the DD Geopolitics Show. I'm Sarah, your host, and your other host, Chris, is joining us from St. Petersburg. How are you?
That's right.
You look
I'm
great.
doing well.
You lost
Thank
more
you so
weight.
No,
So-
I don't know about that. Maybe beard weight.
Beard weight. So guys, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. We don't have billionaire funding. We just have you guys. So let's get into this tonight. This morning, or early today. We have a guest who needs very little introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway because his credentials matter for everything we're about to discuss. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson served 31 years in the United States Army, a Vietnam veteran, special assistant to General Colin Powell when Powell was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, faculty at the U.S. Naval War College, go Navy, hooyah, and from 2002 to 2005, Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. He was in the room. He knows where the bodies are buried sometimes, literally. Since leaving government, he has been one of the most honest and unsparing critics of U.S. foreign policy, the military-industrial complex, and the Israel lobby. He is exactly the kind of voice that gets primary demonetized and ignored by the mainstream media, which is exactly why he's here. Colonel Wilkerson, welcome to DD Geopolitics. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Good to be with you. I've got to ask Chris, are you in St. Petersburg, Russia, or Florida?
Yes. Florida.
Good.
Yeah, much better than St. Pete,
Yeah,
Florida.
more pertinent to international relations.
But before we get into
My flight was delayed 4 hours this morning because of the drones. So that's like.
Well, definitely not St. Pete, Florida. But Colonel, before we get into the news cycle, I want to ask you simply, you've watched the country's foreign policy from inside for 3 decades, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it right now compared to everything you've seen?
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations put out an analysis, I've only read an executive summary of it, of the worst strategic decision in America's history, and they pronounced it the 2003 war with Iraq. I think they're going to have to reconsider. That's where the world is now.
So maybe a 10 or an 11.
Yeah.
Great. So I want to start.
We're in the one right now that I think is frankly going to put an end to American supremacy in the world.
Interesting. I think a lot would agree, as we would here at DD Geopolitics. But I want to start with something that is getting some traction now, but at first it got like zero media coverage. Section 224, fiscal year 2027 NDAA. You were kind enough to send your thoughts to me in an email, but you spent years inside the Pentagon. When you read Section 224, what does it tell you about where this relationship is actually heading, and what sort of stood out to you at first?
Well, it tells me that we've dramatically departed from George Washington's more or less dictum about entangling alliances and decided to have one that is so entangling we won't know one state from the other. And I mean that in a very, very injurious sort of way for the United States and ultimately probably for Israel too, because what we're doing is taking it out of any kind of limelight, the kind of visibility, for example, that got Josh Paul to resign from political military affairs at the State Department and leave. It negates all the things we put in place. However, Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken proved those things don't really matter, to make sure we don't sell these massively deadly arms to people who kill women and children with them and do other heinous things with them. And I was there when the Israelis used an Apache helicopter to fire into a 4th floor hotel room to kill a Hamas leader and kill 2 little children and 2 women. And we at least demarched them. We sent a nasty note that you're not supposed to be doing this with equipment we have sold you under the provisions we sold it to you. This means a negation of all of that. I think it means no visibility. It means you do whatever you want to do. And even more insidious possibly is Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, RTX now, Boeing, Grumman, and others, and similar equivalents in Israel, do whatever they want to do. And they do it out of the limelight and out of oversight. So we already have price overruns by a huge margin, worst we've ever had in the history of the DoD and the military-industrial complex relationship. And this makes it's an imitation of more. and more disastrous waste of people's money to pay CEOs of companies like Lockheed Martin.
Is there any historical precedent for this?
I can't find any. We at the Eisenhower Media Network did a sort of a archival search to see if there's any precedent for this kind of relationship, and we concluded, still looking at it, but we concluded no, there's never been this kind of relationship between supposed allies, even friendly states, whatever you want to call it. There's never been this kind of relationship. You can look back at World War II when I.G. Farben and companies in America, read Missouri Mule about Harry Truman's Special Investigating Committee and how he exposed this, were dealing with one another. And we were selling actually probably some of the ingredients for the gas in the gas chambers in Hitler's extermination centers. So we've had nasty relationships like that before, but this tops them all because this is state to state and therefore condoned by both capitals.
I want to play two clips that I want to get both yours and Chris's opinions. They're quite short, so just bear with me. This is from Trump did an interview today. We'll play a couple of clips from this, but here's a real, it's just funny.
First one to get hit, there would be no Israel. Tell you what, if there wasn't me, there would be no Israel right now. And it started off as when I terminated the horrible Barack Hussein Obama, the Iran nuclear deal.
Weren't for me, there would be no Israel today. But that recalls that, to me, it recalls an earlier clip of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Because our civilization is based on the Judeo-Christian tradition. And if the Maccabees had failed, there'd be no Judaism, there would be no Judeo-Christian civilization. There would be no Maccabees. There would be no United States, there wouldn't be the civilization of freedom.
Got some conflicting opinions here. One says if it weren't for me, Israel wouldn't exist. The other one said if it weren't for Jews, the United States wouldn't exist.
Well, you're listening to two of the most accomplished liars on the face of the earth. I mean, that's their claim to fame in many respects. And Netanyahu's claim may be the most egregious because he's doing like Huckabee did and Ted Cruz and a host of others in the Christian nationalist world we live in. He's using the Old Testament to inform history. And I'm sorry, the Old Testament is not history. It's something written down by a bunch of old men, mostly about another bunch of old men who had this idea that would persevere through time. And it is not history. And in fact, many real historians have disputed much of what's in the Old Testament in terms of Netanyahu-like terms, for example, and in terms of real history. It's just not accurate when you look at it closely. And you have to understand, too, I think, about if you are a Christian and a practicing Christian, Catholic or otherwise. My wife used to say, are Catholics Christians? She was Catholic. It was a joke with her. But if you look at it very closely, when King James sat down to do the revision of the New Testament, it was more about establishing Great Britain as Great Britain than it was revising the New Testament. And what he did during the process of doing that was send troops and others all over England and some into the colonies, as it were, Scotland and Ireland, for example, to kill Catholics, to murder them. So the provenance of all of this stuff is really questionable. And certainly in terms of making history from it, it's extremely questionable. I'll go back to Jeremiah and his prophecies with regard to Israel. Unheeded, a Cassandra of his time, unheeded, and then all of a sudden Nebuchadnezzar, I think it was Nebuchadnezzar II, destroyed the temple and captured the Israeli people and put them in slavery for about 40 years, burned the temple down. So, I mean, this is all wonderful if you want to keep a political mystique going for yourself like Bibi does, but it has no relation to real history. And it's distorting to the extent that it gives cult-like figures, which I would include Huckabee in, our ambassador in Jerusalem. It gives them a credibility that they shouldn't have. And I must say it gives senators like Ted Cruz a credibility that you shouldn't have.
I agree with Colonel Wilkerson. I think it's ahistorical, and it's done merely to justify their contemporary politics and their contemporary policies. That's all it is. And I'm a historian and a religious scholar by training. None of it adds up. None of it. It's all modern. It's all very much entangled in political movements and ideologies stemming from the 19th century onwards. And there is nothing rooted, neither in the religious side nor in the deeper sort of political transformations over history that can justify this kind of language. It's really brute force. It's really a form of gaslighting to tell the people that somehow this is a necessary relationship, and if you don't believe in it, it's existential. You're going to lose your kids. You're going to lose your household. You're going to lose your livelihood. Everything is going to be. It's going to become a very dark and dismal world, which of course we all would agree is quite the contrary of what the world would be like if this didn't happen and didn't continue.
Imagine all the people.
Exactly.
Everybody sings on our show. It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
Larry,
Well, your comments, Chris, your comments are very mindful to me of the comments that occurred about 2 weeks after 9/11. We convened a meeting on Georgetown University's campus and brought everyone we could get our hands on, with Georgetown's president's help, into the campus. Every religion you can think of came to that meeting, and we sat around on a table and at a big table, and we asked each other the question, what do we do now to stop what's going to happen inevitably in this country? First of all, hunting down Muslims and killing them wherever they are, or persecuting them, whatever, and all the other things that are going to happen when people bring these kind of ideas into play after this tragic event. And some of the conversation around that table was really enlightening conversation coming from rabbis, imams, all manner of people. Much of the success of it was because Georgetown knew what it was doing, put it together. And that became an advisory council for the President of the United States. As limited as he was, it did have some leavening effect on some of the revenge-filled talk and possible actions that might have followed had we not done that.
I think you're absolutely right. I just wanted to ask, I wanted to follow up because I wanted to get to the contemporary day stemming, continuing on this line. I wanted to speak with Colonel Wilkerson about what's going on in the latest developments with Iran. And you've been following the news. I've been following it. So I'm Iranian American, and I was a U.S. Army officer, although not with a distinguished career like your own. I left at Captain Promotable. I got out because I didn't want to get deployed. I didn't agree with anything. Already in 2011, I commissioned. By 2013, 14, I mean, the writing was on the wall, even when I was a cadet, that nothing was going well in Iraq and Afghanistan, nowhere. None of these wars. And I protested against them. And I got hazed as a result of always being that one lone voice that was like, sir, I don't think this is a good idea. And it's like, shut up, do your work,
Good for you. Good for you. I just got 2 emails, one from a master sergeant who audited my seminar at Women Marry, who's high up in the intelligence business at Tactical Air Headquarters at Langley, and another one from an individual who is Central Command Lieutenant Colonel. And you wouldn't believe these emails. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster in the ranks. And it's being hidden from the American people, of course, by Hegseth and others, but it's a disaster.
I believe it 100%. And I want to ask you about this because it doesn't seem like, I really believed in the military officer corps as being a learned one that goes back to the Revolutionary War. And maybe you think of medieval times, they were all some of the best educated, reading Thucydides, reading all the classics of the Romans, the Greeks, the Chinese, whoever it is. I feel like our guys now are just playing video games and doing memes, and it feels for me very uncomfortable at the least, if not outright, a disaster. But what I wanted to ask you is, we don't have a clear line as to what the military objectives are, what's being done. You were with Colin Powell, and we had the Powell Doctrine, right? Which I learned about, I studied in depth. What's the Trump Doctrine, and where are we at now? What is happening with we have a U.S. attacks. They say we agree, we don't agree. We attack, Iran retaliates. How long is this going to go on for?
Good question. The only thing I can answer is to quote Bradley Cooper, the admiral now in charge of Central Command, who was the subject of a lot of this email I just described, and his testimony to Congress, which was absolutely typical of a surface warfare officer, but not typical of a 4-star surface warfare officer, one who's gone through the system and risen to the point where he understands the confluence of policy and strategy and so forth. And his answer to Seth Moulton, the congressman from Massachusetts, who himself graduated from Harvard right after 9/11 and went directly into the Marine Corps and volunteered and went to Iraq. And so his question was essentially, what's the mission? Mm-hmm. And Cooper's answer was like a lieutenant commander on the game floor in Newport when I was working up there as a professor, and I would take him into the corner and say, "Don't ever say that, Commander." He said, "Everything's going according to plan." That's not what I asked you. The plan does not outlast first contact with the enemy. I asked you if you're accomplishing your mission. What is your mission? And Cooper couldn't tell him. There is no mission articulated by the commander-in-chief or the Secretary of War, Defense. There is no mission. The mission is simply to drop bombs wherever you're ordered to drop bombs. That is not a mission. That's just an order to take kinetic action. So we're caught in that. We do not have a mission. We do not, therefore, have a strategy to accomplish that mission. We have nothing but Donald Trump as commander-in-chief and Bibi Netanyahu as commander-in-chief number 2. That's all we have. And the military, those who remain, and you're right, Hegseth is weeding out those who remain who've read, understand history, understand policy and strategy and the nexus between the two, understand what a good mission statement says and so forth, as you were saying. He's weeding them out because he wants lackeys at all rank levels. He wants lackeys because I think they're planning on something. And they do not want a military that is anything but neutral at worst and on their side at best. So they won't fail again. You know, I said January the 6th and the so-called insurrection didn't fail because the system held. It failed because the coup plotters were incompetent. One of the things you have to do, mandatory to do a successful coup d'etat, is to have the state power on your side, the military, or at least neutral and ready to come in when they see the writing on the wall that you're winning. You know, you got to have that. They didn't have it that time. They will have it this time. And Hegseth is fashioning that very military.
Interesting. Well, militarily speaking, there was a tit for tat last night, I guess, with retaliation only focused on the Gulf states. Today, I was listening to a conversation amongst people with opposing views to ours, which I do often, so I can kind of get a grasp. And they said that the longer this goes on, the more leverage the Iran loses with the Strait, because people will start to adapt to working around it, and the Strait will become less powerful. What's your opinion on that? And how long does Iran have? People say Trump's kind of a race against time because he has, you know, the June UFC fight, the 250th, and then the midterms and the World Cup. But what about the Iranians? How much time do they have? And will the Strait lose its leverage?
That's a very interesting strategic misconception. I can understand how someone might arrive at it who doesn't know Persia at all, doesn't know the region at all. But anyone that knows the region and knows the situation couldn't arrive at that conclusion. What is happening right now is Iran is allowing the Strait to be used and making money off of it, as are their Omani counterparts who don't talk much about it. But nonetheless, they're making money. And the ships are getting through that Iran wants to get through, and the ships aren't getting through that Iran doesn't want to get through, read in some sort of support of Israel. And oh, by the way, the Houthis are doing the same thing again to the Bab el-Mandeb in the Red Sea. So you're not getting through there if you're supporting Israel or even look like you are. But you are otherwise, because the Iranians, unlike we, have absolutely no interest in causing global depression. They simply don't, because they know they would be a product of that or a receiver of some of that. So they want to restore commerce as restored it can be, but not for Israel. And not for any of Israel's acolytes like the Emirates. So they're doing exactly what they want to do. And we're helpless to prevent it. Every now and then we try. We say we got a blockade. We say we're going to attack this, we're going to attack that. It doesn't work because they have, as President Ahmadinejad, looking me right in the face in New York at the UNGA that year, said to me, let me see now, who is it that's the problem in the Persian Gulf? Iran has 1,875 kilometers roughly on the Persian Gulf. The United States has how many? None. So who's the problem in the Gulf? Now we know that the Yemeni foreign minister has cleared it up even further because in English, he said, the problem in the region is Israel, not Iran. Mm-hmm. And this was before this war started. So they figured it out. I mean, you can say that they knew in Riyadh and elsewhere that it was a problem, but they kept hoping that the empire would keep the problem from festering to the point that it would roll back on them dramatically. So now it's done. So they're done with the empire.
You mentioned Oman. What else can you tell us about Oman? Recently, Trump threatened to bomb them. We showed it on our show. I think it was a week ago. We always jokingly say Oman is the Switzerland of the peninsula. But what can you tell us about that threat and what our relationships are like, what our relations are like with Oman?
Well, it didn't do anything but make our relationship sour. And they were our good office's go-to people. Whenever you needed negotiations that were dicey and one party wouldn't enter into in the Gulf or whatever, and Oman had its good offices to lay out for you, they would do it. And now we've soured that. So we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we not only will be kicked out of Southwest Asia, we won't come back.
And also, on that same token, Saudi Arabia has been kind of quieter than they usually are. Last night, they weren't part of the retaliation group. There's also rumors that Egypt has sent them some of their air defenses. I don't know how true that is, but it seems that they're kind of taken out of this GCC block a little bit in Iran's eyes. And they've also it feels like they've taken a bit of a step back away from this. What are your thoughts?
Well, they have significant Pakistani forces in their country now. You can argue, given on the history of those forces and what they've done in the past, that they're there for the Hajj and for Mecca and protection thereof. One time back in the past, they really had to do an extraordinarily good job because there were terrorists in there and they were threatening to kill people left and right. So I think that's principally why they're there. But then you have to ask yourself why they sit their top flight aircraft squadron to their jets. I'm thinking that maybe they're going to help the Saudis keep the United States from using Saudi facilities should we try to force our way in. Bottom line with the Saudis, I think, was articulated to me very clearly about 48 hours ago. They have told Donald Trump that his idea about the Abraham Accords is a no-go completely, that as long as Israel refuses to deal with the future of a Palestinian state, they want nothing to do with Israel. Dramatic conclusion by MBS. So unless Trump has a magic wand where he can turn all that around, we have lost everything that he wants to insert back in it, the Abraham Accords being the leading instrument, to try and get some leverage. He's not going to get it because they have given up on him and given up on Israel. And MBS has just supposedly moved his sovereign wealth fund investment in a pipeline that would obviate the Strait of Hormuz in many respects. It was going to run north out of Saudi Arabia through Haifa, where Israel would gain transshipment fees and fuel, and over to Ceyhan. Now it's still going to go to Ceyhan, but it's going to go up through Syria. It's not going to go through Israel. And that's where his investment has shifted. So thank you, Donald Trump, for what you've done.
You mentioned the Abraham Accords, which I was going to ask you about anyway for our viewers. This is that map that we prefer to use. This is the Abraham Shield map that gives you kind of an idea about the Abraham Accords. What do you think about, we posited this, I think, last time on our stream. We said that Trump was kind of using the Abraham Accords as extortion. If you don't join the Abraham Accords, I'll bomb Iran and then they'll bomb you. And where does this leave the Abraham Accords, Jared Kushner's pet project? Is this just a pipe dream? Have they moved on to the Isaac Accords? Have they given up? What do you think of the Abraham Accords in its current state?
I think they're dead in the water. I don't think they're going anywhere, because I think the Saudis are serious about there has to be a viable route articulated by Israel, guaranteed by Israel, to a Palestinian state. And under this administration, that's never going to happen. And what's really happening right now in Israel is really worse, because what's happening is Netanyahu is in trouble politically and very well may not be reelected, not because he's seen the light, not because he's found Jesus, as it were. It's because the other people, including 82% of Israeli Jews, don't like the way he's bending to Donald Trump, don't like the way he's conducting Israel's security affairs, particularly in Lebanon. The IDF chief just censured him, an unheard of thing for an IDF chief to do for the sitting prime minister. And he censured him on military matters. And that's what they're going to attack him on in this election and defeat him. He's not being tough enough. He's not finished off Hamas in Gaza. He's not completely annexed the West Bank. He's not gone into Syria as forcefully as he should have. He ain't defeated Iran. And he's getting licked in Lebanon. That's where they're going to defeat him. And so it's a worse situation arising rather than a better one with him departing. I hate to say that, because I think one of the boons on the earth would be Netanyahu going to his grave, frankly.
I wanted to ask you, Colonel Wilkerson, when I was a young cadet, we read about the Millennium Games, or at least I did. I was very fascinated about
Millennium Challenge, yeah. My old general ran them, General Van Riper. Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about it because we're living through it. I believe it. I believe everything that was. It's not like, for me, all you have to do is crack open a book, which none of these politicians have done since primary school. Crack open a book, read what others have done, and then say, oh, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Tell us about that challenge, about the sort of blue force, red force, all this kind of that happened there, and what it really indicated at that time, which was what, 3 decades ago?
Yeah, 2003. So 2002, 2003. I just had an occasion to meet with General Van Riper down at Williamsburg. I gave a talk down there, and he was at the talk. He's 88 years old, I think, now, and he's just as chipper as he ever was. And we started talking about it. And you're right, that game was conducted against Iran that was probably 40 to 50% less powerful today or then than today. And yet in that game conducted according to Hoyle, I mean, he was director of the Marine Corps Development Education Command. That game showed we lost. He was even directed to conduct it a second time because they didn't like the fact that we had lost. He did, and we lost again. And it should have edified people, they should have taken note. Even Operation Praying Mantis and Operation Earnest Will that we conducted in 88 and 89, I guess it was, in the Gulf to reflag Kuwaiti tankers and get them through the strait. And essentially Praying Mantis was to take out the Iranian command and control system, which at that time was on an oil platform in the Gulf. But that was a very, very weakened Iran. They just finished 8 long, brutal years of war with Iraq. And the Ayatollah even said at the time he wouldn't have accepted the UN Security Council resolution to end the war if it hadn't been for the fact that all of a sudden we shot down an Iranian Airbus and killed 270 or so or more innocent civilians taking off from the airport there in Tehran. Vincennes made a mistake and shot her down. And he said, I can't fight Saddam Hussein, Iraq, and the United States at the same time. So I'll take the UN resolution and end this war. So they were very weak at that time, extremely weak. And all they've been doing since then is building and building and building, particularly ballistic missiles, in order to not be in such a situation again, either against Baghdad, rejuvenated, or against the monster across the ocean. And that's worked. They've got formidable forces now. And they've listened to the world, Ukraine in particular, as to what works and what doesn't work and what's obsolete and what's not. Drones being one of the key features there. So they're fairly resolute as a people also. That has been increased by the bombing. Bombing usually does that. It makes people more hate you and be resilient against you than it does otherwise. And we had nothing to follow that up with. So, and nothing to coordinate that with. So it's just been disaster. We've killed a lot of civilians, including at Manab school where we killed all those school children. And I'm told by reliable authorities in Tehran that we've killed a lot of children elsewhere too, in hospitals, in traffic on highways and such. Particularly bombing, you know, we've been bombing the Chinese railroad that comes in from that beautiful mountain town. What's the name? Mashhad, I believe.
Yes,
comes
Mashhad.
in, yeah, and goes about 700 kilometers right into Tehran. And I tell people, look at that railroad and look at the Caspian Sea and look at Tehran. It's about 100 kilometers to a port on the Caspian Sea, and it's about 6 hours on the railroad, longer from China, of course, but the supplies can come from Kazakhstan and other places in Central Asia too. And tell me that Iran isn't getting supplied, and oh, by the way, Hezbollah too, because all you got to do is sneak it across northern Syria, and anybody can tell you, including my son who flew that area in the Iraq War with the Iraqi 12th Air Force, nothing goes on there but smuggling. They smuggle everything. They smuggle food. They smuggle diesel. They smuggle gasoline, tires, everything. He observed the border every night. He said, Dad, there was no terrorist activity. 6 months he did this. There was no terrorist activity, but there was so much smuggling. It was incredible.
Yes, it's true.
It's their life. It's their life. It's the way they make money.
I'll tell you, Colonel Wilkerson, I fought in Syria. I volunteered. I went there. I worked with Wagner. I worked with Syrian Arab Army. And I spent a year in 2017 fighting against ISIS. And one thing I didn't fight for the US. I fought for the Syrians. What I found out was everyone has a price. You said, this Arab guy who was in this Daesh village, in this ISIS village, he said, if you paid me $300 more, I'd become Christian for you. Well, yeah. I'll join a Christian militia.
Well, you know, Torquemada sat behind the Inquisition desk and said, will you become a Christian? No, death. Will you become a Christian? Yes.
Yes.
I'll become a Christian.
I want to go back to you mentioned BB's kind of approval rating or vibes inside the country. And I want to go back to this call. I asked people yesterday, you're effing crazy. And again, notice the author and the publication. This is from Axios, Barack Ravid, who we all know as an inside trader, using his articles to, I guess, create market volatility. I asked people if they even thought that this call even happened at all. And most people gave mixed answers. Here's Trump doubling down on it this morning.
You were angry with him. You said, are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail. Is that true? Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. You know, at some point I said, Bibi, we got to stop this. We got to stop it. But I have a very good relationship. We've done well together. He always says, we could never have done it, but everybody knows that we could have never done it without the United States. But I've worked very well together. I like Bibi a lot, and I've worked very well with him. We had I'm a wartime president. He's a wartime prime minister, very important part of the world. And I think we've done, very well. We've gotten along very well together.
What do you make of the phone call and the contents of it?
I think it was pretty much as advertised, and I understand from others who've given me information besides Axios that there were several effing words in there. And I will say something else too. I've had people who were fairly close to Donald Trump way back, and they tell me that he despises Bibi Netanyahu and that Bibi Netanyahu despises him. They get along, and they have to get along, because it's the closest relationship that America has with any other state in the world. And it's an essential relationship for Israel. They wouldn't exist if the United States weren't supplying them. That's a statement of fact. They would have been overrun a long time ago. And maybe even other critical factors would have played too, like when Golda Meir was threatening to use a nuclear weapon in the 1973 war, and other similar episodes. And the story of how they got nuclear weapons is just a story of perfidy, French, British, American, and all the things that South Africa did to allow them not to conduct just one, but 2 or 3 nuclear tests. By the way, Iran's getting ready to conduct a nuclear test, probably. It's about 60% assured now, I think. And it's a long backstory, but we knew it was going to happen. We knew that they had probably reconsidered once the Ayatollah was killed, the way he was killed. And we're going to have a wholly different situation when Iran explodes a weapon and everybody knows that they're a nuclear power, an entirely different situation. The question is, will it be more positive or decidedly negative?
Are you corroborating the rumors that Larry Johnson and Pepe Escobar have also stated that Iran does have a nuclear weapon?
Not just that. Professor Emeritus at MIT, Ted Postal, and I have been talking about this for a long time. And I agree with him. And I did the negotiations up close and personal with North Korea when Kang Sak-ju and Yi Gun turned to our representative in Pyongyang and said, put your economic package away. We already have nuclear weapons. We have 6 to 12 of them. Boy, what a shock that was for Jim Kelly to get that information, and even more so to bring it back to Colin Powell. But that's how quickly they got them, and we thought they were still, months, if not a year or 2 away. They already had 6 to 12 weapons. So Ted's theory is that they have something underground, deep underground, unknown to Mossad or CIA or any intelligence services, except possibly the Chinese or the Russian. And they have all the ingredients there, and they were just waiting to marry them up: warhead, fissile material, missile. And they've done that now. And Ted puts a 60 to 80% probability on it. And when Ted does that, I listen. So it would mean that the information I got in New York when I met with Ahmadinejad at the UNGA, and he put his foreign minister in front of me who spoke fluent English. Ahmadinejad had to have a translator. He spoke some English, but he used a translator most of the time. The foreign minister looked at me and said, "You're a military, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." You know the word operationalize, don't you? I said, "Of course I do." He said, "What do I have to do to operationalize the fatwa? Do I need to go to the UN Security Council or to the Oval Office and on bended knee spread blood on the floor and tell you it's anathema for Islam to have a nuclear weapon? We do not kill civilians. Nuclear weapons, by order of their nature, kill civilians massively. We do not want them." I believed him. And therefore I supported the JCPOA fully, because I didn't think they had made a decision to build a bomb. Well, we changed that. Be careful what you wish for when you don't have a strategy to gain it. We're forcing Iran to go nuclear.
Before we move on from this region, one of our viewers asked this, but coupled with, isn't Israel just a proxy of the U.S., but coupled with what we've discussed, Bibi today or this morning released an official thank you to the United States Congress for attempting to combine the two militaries. I used to agree that Israel was nothing more than a proxy of the United States, the unsinkable aircraft carrier, but now I'm not so sure. What are your thoughts on that?
I've always thought Israel was a strategic liability, not an asset. Even during the Cold War, I thought that. I was a pariah in that thought in the military. But after the Cold War ended, I was not such a pariah. And a lot of military officers began to agree with me that they were more a strategic liability than an asset. My original view was based on the fact that as long as they had done what they had done since 1948, there would never be peace in the region. And therefore, having an aircraft carrier upon which there would never be peace was not very strategically viable. And then my view changed markedly, of course, once it was not the Cold War anymore, and we didn't need the aircraft carrier in the eastern end of the Mediterranean that never sunk. And I watched what Israel was doing, doubling down, tripling down on the anathema that they had created since 1948. And I said, this is a hell of a liability. So you're right, I think now. But we're each other's worst enemy. We have made each other our worst enemies. At the same time, we think we're making each other friends. Just look at this relationship that people like John Hagee and Mike Huckabee and others have with Israel. They think the end times will mean the killing of all the unbelievers. Well, that includes Jews. The Jews think that's bull, and therefore they're allying with people like Hagee and Huckabee and so forth, because they don't think anybody's going to come down to earth. And if it's a Messiah that comes down to earth, Cyrus the Great was really the Messiah, it'll be another person, whatever. They don't think at all, and yet they're locked. They're locked with one another. It's duplicitous. It's insidious. It's profane. And yet we're locked into it, and they are locked into us. They couldn't survive without us now. And I'm not so sure. This is my pronouncement. Israel as a Jewish state will cease to exist within a year or two.
You heard it here first. DG Politics. Clip it, producer. I want to move on to East. Since you mentioned the Cold War, let's hop on over to Eastern Europe / Russia really quickly. Albanians are going crazy. I am too on the inside with this Kushner secret island, which I'm calling Epstein Island 2.0. Reason for that is because Nat Rothschild actually secured the deal and introduced the Kushners to Edi Rama, the prime minister of Albania. But the reason why I'm bringing it up to you is because of its strategic location and what is on the island. It has an old base from the Cold War, communist days. Albania is littered with bunkers and bases, and it has a nuclear fallout shelter underneath. Have you looked into this island? What are your thoughts on it? Why there? And I'm going to couple it with, once again, Chili Pepper, thank you. Is it true that a U.S. nuclear submarine with 20 low-yield tactical nukes is hiding in the Mediterranean?
U.S. submarines hide all over the world all the time. I don't think a ballistic missile submarine is hiding in the sense that question pretends. But yeah, there's usually a U.S. missile submarine somewhere in that area. And the most propitious, most advantageous spot on Earth for submarines, nuclear or diesel, is the North Arabian Sea and the Sea of Oman, because the salinity of the water, the convergence zones, the temperatures of the water, the opacity of the water, almost negate both passive and active sonar, which is a submarine's major defense against another submarine, for example, and even against a surface target. So I imagine the North Arabian Sea is full of submarines right now, particularly Chinese diesel subs, which are trailing our carriers and, ready to shoot if they have to. It's mostly intelligence gathering. So there are submarines everywhere. Submarines are still the only weapon system out of the Cold War that maintain virtual invulnerability. So it wouldn't be startling if there'd be a submarine there. And I wouldn't know, because that's one of the closest guarded secrets in the American military is where the subs are, both attack and ballistic. But it's a good question, because I've been wondering what would happen if we suddenly had what happens in Pacific exercises, for example, which I'm most familiar with because I was out there for so long. Most of the time, the carrier would end the exercise, like Pacific Rim or whatever. A U.S. skipper who was playing the orange team, playing China, playing Russia, whatever, would surface 200-300 meters off the stern of the carrier, and over the guard channel, 243.0, I believe it is, over the guard channel, he would come up and say, "Bang, you're dead." In other words, telling the carrier, all of your defenses just failed, dude. I'm within torpedo range and I could have sunk you. And that's the reality of submarines. And it's the reality of aircraft carriers and other surface combatants too. They're passé. $16 billion sailing on top of the ocean, that's passé. It's not needed anymore. Worse, it's going to kill 5,000 Americans in one fell swoop when it is proven that it's obsolete. And yet we keep building them. We got 2 on the ways now, one coming off at about 16 bill. And we got another one coming off with John F. Kennedy, I think, in a few years. And it's probably going to rise to something like 22 or 23 billion. So you asked about Albania, though. Let me give you the backstory of Albania. I got a call from a friend. He had just been assigned to be the deputy chief of mission in Tirana. And we talked about his boss, who is ostensibly the person he was dealing with was the equivalent of the DNI in our country. And I said, David, why are you calling me? He said, because she wants to read all about Colin Powell because he's her hero and wants to know all about Colin Powell. Long story short, I said, okay, let's talk. We haven't talked since. And I suspect it's because, 1, he's detected the nature of my podcast, and 2, because I had a come to Jesus talk about what I think of Albania, which right next to North Korea and Ukraine itself now is the #1 criminal state on the face of the earth. So there's no surprise at all that Jared Kushner fell into that nest of thieves. I mean, this is a guy who is now instrumental in getting Palestinians killed even more in Gaza because of his neglect or his intent with Netanyahu in the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is doing nothing to help the Palestinians and helping Netanyahu continue to kill them. So this is a reprehensible individual, Jared Kushner. I mean, I can't put it any better than that. Reprehensible individual. And now he's dealing with one of the most reprehensible criminal states on the face of the earth.
Yep.
Stay tuned for Epstein Island 2.0.
Yeah. Or worse.
Yeah.
And right there where the conduit is, you know, the #1 crime in that region is not drugs or arms. It's trafficking in people.
Humans, yeah.
Human trafficking.
Yeah. That's why
and increasingly organs, human organs. Think about the IDF harvesting organs in Palestine.
You remember the Kosovo Liberation Army? You remember that Kosovo?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was its mission, basically.
Yes.
It did that. It took Serbians, it took others, and it basically harvested organs, prisoners. It was horrific. And they are still walking free. Not only that, I think Kosovo has the largest military base of the United States in Europe.
It's a disaster, and Putin and Yeltsin before him were right to comment that they weren't going to recognize that as an independent state because they recognized it as to what it was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just a defense of Serbia. It was also a statement about what Kosovo really was.
Yes, absolutely.
Before we let you go, let's ask about the other psychos in Eastern Europe up in the Baltics.
I thought you were going to ask about Mertz.
They're all together, really. Well, they called them the 3 Chihuahuas.
You know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
At least Elizabeth Weidel is getting ready to give Friedrich Merz the marching orders. She's the head of the AfD. And it's just a matter of time because they are going to get the vote. And they will form the first government in Germany that actually represents a majority. It might just be 52, 53% of the German people. And it's going to change Germany completely. First thing she's going to do is deal with Moscow.
Inshallah.
I hope so.
Yeah, inshallah.
Speaking of Moscow, actually St. Petersburg, Chris, you're there. Why don't you talk about the attack from who knows, and the fact that Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, NATO members, are allowing Ukrainian drone units operating from their territory to strike Russia.
Well, this is something that we've known for a long time, that the Baltic states and actually a lot of these European countries allow their airspace and their territory to be used by special operators of the Ukrainian army, SBU, also by the drone units. And these drones that came in today, I came in here and you could still kind of sense that atmosphere because we landed right in the early morning. We were supposed to get in very early so that I could make all my plans. I got in and quickly had to run to the forum to give my speech. But you could tell that it was panic. People did not expect this to happen. I mean, okay, you expect it, but people didn't think that it was going to be of this level. The footage I saw when I walked into the forum was the drones were just above the water, avoiding detection. This
Right.
was planned. This was planned. This was premeditated, and they wanted to inflict this kind of damage, and it was visible from the forum site. They wanted to create that kind of atmosphere that, okay, Russia
Right.
tries to sell itself as a stable, secure, and peaceful country. No, we're going to show the participants there that it's actively at war. So I thought that was a big shock for people here. But I will say President Putin's coming to give a speech on Friday here. We were just getting ready for the plenary session today. And I think that it's clear from what happened in Starobelsk, the increase of attacks, the sort of changing of the tempo that we're in for a lot. Look at this. I mean, this image has gone, we post this image. This is a civilian truck that has been modified to launch these weapon systems.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're playing with fire. I mean, I hate to put it so bluntly, but they're playing with fire. Putin has made it, and Sergei Lavrov has made it very clear that they're going to make a decision to change the SMO. It's not going to be a special military operation anymore. It's going to be a war. And the war is going to be with NATO. And they're going to start striking within actual NATO member countries, facilities they know that are supporting the war against them. Yeah. And I think he's serious. I think he's deadly serious. And here's what's going to unfold. Donald Trump could stop this. Remember all the times he said he was going to stop this war in 24 hours, blah, 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 typical Donald Trump talk. But he could stop it in a heartbeat. All he'd have to do is cease the money, cease the supplies, get the Europeans to do the same, which he could do. He could get most of them to do that, and most of them is all we need. Otherwise, Putin's going to start attacking first NATO facilities in these other countries and in Ukraine. Now, he's already attacked 2 in Ukraine. I think he's going to hit other NATO facilities, probably starting in maybe Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, maybe Poland. He may not hit Poland because Poland is 50-50 right now. I mean, 50% got brains and don't want to mess with Moscow, and 50% want the United States to land in Poland and take Moscow on. But he's going to start doing that. And he's also hinted, and he's not even, I don't even listen to Medvedev, but I listen to some of the others like Rybakov. I think he's hinted that we will go with small nuclear weapons if we have to. And that, again, here we got a possibility of use in Southwest Asia, a possibility of use in Central Europe, and we're looking at probably proliferation within the next 5 years or so to 2 other countries. And no treaties, not a single treaty in the world. And Trump had a colossal gall to stiff Putin when Putin actually offered just carte blanche a year extension on New START. And Trump turned him down. So we have no treaties at all. And we have a real problem. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists said they think we're as close to nuclear war as we've ever been, discounting Cuba and Berlin. We're closer now than we've ever been. I think they're right.
Before you go, I'll ask the question everybody's asking me. Does Colonel Wilkerson hold out any hope that the U.S. can correct our trajectory after everything we've spoken about today?
Consulting history, it's very, very infrequent that an empire in the state that we're in right now recovers. I mean, you could say, okay, Eastern Roman Empire recovered by adopting Christianity. Constantine was not a fool. You could say there were others that modified their behavior, if you will, or were forced to modify their behavior and survived for longer. But we are looking very much like we might actually be our own worst enemy. By that, I mean, we might dismember. We might fall apart. And it's going to start, and watch this very closely, with the midterms. And with either a resounding defeat of the Republican Party that will not be accepted, or declaration of an insurrection surrounding some of the things they do with ICE principally to keep the elections from being against them. And we wind up with a civil war. And then the question becomes, has Hegseth fashioned the military sufficiently that it will take part? Has he fashioned ice significantly that it will take part? I'll answer that latter question because I know some of the people in ICE. They're the same people that marched in Virginia when they were pulling the Robert E. Lee statue down. These people should never be in a uniform, never be in a uniform. Several of them were in Minnesota involved with those deaths up there. So we got the brown shirts already. ICE is the brown shirts. This is going to be a very dangerous period. Extremely dangerous period. People say we can't fall apart. We're too intact. We are the most disparate nation fused together in the history of the world in many respects of our size and power. We could fall apart easily. I could even define the different countries that might be created.
Cascadia, please. Cascadia.
Pacific Northwest with Canada, you know?
Yes.
I want my Vermont Republic. I want my Vermont Republic.
Yeah. Texas will be with no one.
We'll be with Israel. They own the grill, the grid, and the water.
If Governor Abbott is in place and Paxton gets elected, they probably will.
This has been an amazing interview. I am so grateful, Colonel. I really hope that you had a good enough time to be willing to come back again because I could keep you for another hour. This was incredible. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you for your good questions and stay safe in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, I'll try to stay safe in Cascadia.
And don't go to Albania.
No.
Enjoy the rest of your day and week, Colonel. Hopefully talk soon.
Take care.
Take care, sir.
Wow. I loved that. He was so insightful. He told me so many things I had no idea.
Fantastic.
You could see my facial expressions like,
what a fantastic man. Really, I'll tell you one thing. I would serve under that man any day.
Yeah, he's a gem.
Really.
What else we got today? You're over in St. Petersburg. I have this section, MAGA Jews and Russophobia.
Oh, yes. I saw. Who did I see when I walked into the forum?
Candace?
Professor Dugan.
Uncle Sasha. How is he? He looks good?
He's good. He was good. He was very dynamic, excited. He had his session at the same time as my session about defending Russia. But it was very good, very well attended. And I saw Maria Zakharova as well. The whole crew was here today. The whole crew was fantastic. Listen, a lot of people, very beautiful, a lot of technology, a lot of robots walking around. It was very cool.
Robot? Oh, I don't like that one bit. But here's, since you mentioned Dugan. Psycho psyop.
There it is.
Oh my God. He's got everybody triggered. Candace has everybody triggered. Loomer's completely off the rails. She says that Loomer Unleashed is on the ground in Ukraine. Russia could do the funniest thing right now. I'll just say the same thing that the right wingers say about like Jackson or Chris. Russia could do the funniest thing right now.
Listen, Russia, Loomer is actually not Laura, but Larry. You know it's true.
So that's where we're at. They're all arguing. It's a bunch of Slavic Jews arguing with a bunch of Slavic Christians.
Well,
take your refuse back, Slavic countries. I'm tired of these people.
I will say on the plane today were two women that I instantly knew which country they were from. And I saw one of their passports and they were loud mouthing that Hebrew language the whole fucking flight. And I was like, shut up. I just want to sleep. And they were the only two. Everybody else was quiet. And they were like, they were going off on each other. So I was like, I hope they're not going to the forum.
It's funny because I was arguing with the producer a little bit the other day. And he wrote some notes for this show and mentioning that Laura Loomer, Ben Shapiro, and Mark Levin are all Russian. They all have Slavic backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that how anti-Russian they are. And I think that's like something that really needs to be explored.
Well, I think they are harboring resentment for the pogroms. But you know, the Tsar said it. What could you know?
Why are our most maniacal Jews from the Eastern Bloc? Kushner's from Belarus, Shapiro's from Belarus and the Baltics. Laura Loomer is from where is she from? I don't remember. She's from Russia, and then Levin is from Ukraine. There you have it. They left. Thanks, Stalin. Thanks, Stalin. Well, you can thank Stalin authentically. I can thank Stalin sarcastically because you're reaping the benefits of Stalin in USSR. And I'm reaping not benefits, the punishments over here. I've got all these Slavic Jews going crazy, these neocons.
They are.
Anyway.
They're Khazars, ultimately.
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day, why do they have such like almond, like round, like almost slanted eyes? It was like, they're Turkish Asians. What are you talking about? What do you think about that? I was listening to Jonathan Pollard today. I shouldn't do that, but he's saying that next it's going to be Turkey and Egypt.
Yeah, I think that they're going to go after Turkey. Listen, they're going to go after everybody. This ideology. Listen, if your ideology says that you're chosen by God and that your dominion is the world and everybody's going to be, according to the Talmud, a slave, I mean, of course I'm going to go to war with everybody. I'm a nuclear power.
Of course, why not? They're going to go to war with every nuclear power.
You're telling me, listen. I just want you to think of the psychology. You're telling me that they have all of these mitzvot and all these rules and they can find loopholes in the rules and the Talmud and things like that. You're telling me that these people are not going to want 3,000 slaves? You think Jonathan Pollard doesn't want a couple thousand slaves? Rub his feet, take care of them?
I don't know about these Christians that worship in one Jew when they should worship all of us.
No. It's that rabbi. You remember the rabbi? He's like, and they have J.C. Penney.
J.C. Penney. That's Rabbi Mizrahi. He's doubled down. He said 6 million people have to die, 6 million Gentiles. And somebody asked him the other day, like, do you really believe that? He's like, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
They chose that despicable Nazarene.
The Nazarene.
Anyway, what are you going to do tonight? It's still early. Are you going back out?
Yeah, I'm going to go check the messages, see what's going on. There's a lot of parties happening, a lot of shenanigans.
We're going to let you get to the parties because I need to live vicariously through you. Thank you, Mo. All the other super chats I got to you guys. Hopefully you were satisfied with the answers. Other than that, we'll let Chris go out to the party. I told him his task is to schmooze and booze everyone.
Yes,
so he's going to go do that and enjoy it. And we will see you guys on Sunday.
Lots of love, everybody. Take care.